Hey you, it's Rachel O'Mara. I'm host of the Pausecast, and I'm so glad that you are here. We are discussing tips and proven strategies in the world of emotional intelligence so that you can rise to your next level of leadership without the overwhelm. I'm also the author of the book Pause, Harnessing the Life-Changing Power of Giving Yourself a Break, based on my burnout of Google and all the things that I've learned since that are really in this realm of neuroscience, psychology, and emotional intelligence. If you're interested to download my free guidebook for how to get out of overwhelm, I invite you to do that at rachelomara.com/guidebook. Just so excited. Let's just start and dive in. Thank you for joining me today in the Pausecast. And today I am so excited for our VIP guest, Kate Johnson, Olympian from the 2004 rowing team in the house. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Rachel. Good to see you. Thanks so much for having me.
It's so exciting that you're here. And I can't wait to talk more about your career and leadership in the world of tech at Google. But first, let's just talk a little bit about the rowing world. You're actually the first guest I've had on the podcast who, first of all, is an Olympian and also a rower Olympian. So I'm very honored that you're here as a rower and someone who has been rowing since 15 and aspired for Olympic status. It didn't happen for me, but I'm just so glad and grateful that you're here.
Yeah, of course. The thing I was excited to talk about is whether you're an elite athlete or an elite executive, the breaks that we need are so important, and the self-reflection and evaluation that we do on those journeys, they're very similar. So, rowing has so many parallels for the corporate world as
So
well.
many parallels. Yeah. So
Yeah.
why don't we just start there? Tell me a little bit about your career path and how you ended up where you are today at Google working in brand marketing.
Yeah. So I competed at the 2004 Olympics, like you said. Rowing was a goal I set. Going to the Olympics actually is a goal that I set for myself, and it's a pretty cool story because I'd been rowing 6 weeks when I wrote down in permanent pen my dream of going to the Olympics. I had been a competitive swimmer growing up. We moved from California to Portland when I was a freshman in high school, and I found rowing. I fell in love with it, and I wrote my goal down in permanent ink. And I just share that because just very early on, having the commitment, I think one of the beautiful things about when we're younger is we do dream so big. That we don't put the limitations on ourselves that we tend to put on ourselves as adults because we just don't know yet. We don't know how hard the world is, or we don't know what the barriers are going to be or whatever. And so that really set a path for me. I mean, rowing really radically changed my life. I ended up going to the University of Michigan on a full ride, you know, definitely because I was rowing for the US national team during the summers. I didn't have a normal college experience. I wasn't getting internships or real work, quote unquote, experience
Yeah.
while I was in college. And then when I transitioned out of college, it was to train full time, like 3 days, 3 practices a day, 6 days a week for the Olympic team, twice on Sundays on our day off. And did that for almost 4 years. And then when I was done, I just, and we can talk a little bit about that later on, but when I was done, the decision to retire, the decision to leave something, and that's, I know we'll unpack that a little bit, but that was a huge transition for me and something that I bumped up against in my professional career too. Long story short, retired from rowing earlier than I thought. I went to one Olympics. I always thought if I'd made it to one, I'd want to do two or three, but I was done after my first games. I kind of scraped the bottom of the barrel, figured all the things out, and was ready for the next.
Yeah, as our mutual friend Vinny Ventura likes to say, it's great to leave at the top.
Great to leave at the top. Yeah, totally. And so then it was oh God, choose your own adventure. What do I do next? And so I moved to New York City, and through a number of informational interviews, ended up at IMG, which is a sports marketing agency that invented sports marketing. I was there for almost 8 years. I worked in New York with them for 4 years. Then I moved to Canada. Then I moved to London for 3 years, which was an incredible adventure, and was always on kind of the agency side of sports marketing, helping clients with their marketing plans around Wimbledon or rugby or the Olympics, and eventually realized, okay, I love the agency side. I'm ready to go onto the brand side and be the part of this chain that gets to call the shots. And so I moved back from London. I went to Visa, where I ended up heading up the global sponsorship team for about 7 years at Visa, and then same thing, like, I kind of was feeling a little bit of, like, Groundhog's Day, rinse and repeat in terms of how we were activating these things, and I was just ready for a new challenge, and I've never applied for a job in my life. Like, they've all come out of informational interviews or, outreach and connections through friends or whatever. I ended up writing my job description at Google and going there to build really a sports marketing practice at Google, which I've been doing for the last 6 years. And it's been the hardest job I've ever had, but also rewarding in all these same ways that it should be for having been so hard. And that's where I am now.
You're such a trailblazer. Yeah, I know I left about 4 years ago. There was no sports brand marketing there. It was just really more retail, all the traditional marketing that you would see from a Google search,
Yeah.
packaging, CPG, that kind of thing. So congratulations. You're a total trailblazer, and that is hard. That is definitely a challenge. So we're going to get into that. Tell me about what feels like the win in your career. I know you've got wins outside your career with rowing. That's a career and win in itself. Many wins.
Yeah.
What do you feel like has been your, there's a word for this, like a coup d'etat of your
Mm.
career so
You
far?
know,
Give us
I think that is such a great question. I grew up in Portland. I started rowing in Portland, Nike's backyard. And I remember there being an advertisement when I was in high school that Nike ran, which this campaign called If You Let Me Play, which was really targeted at teenage girls who were dropping out of sport, still are at unprecedented rates. And the whole campaign was like, if you let me play, I will be more likely to be successful in life. And it used data and all these great selling points. And I felt like Nike was talking to me. I was like this young kid in Portland. I found the sport that I loved. And so pretty early on, just like feeling inspired by a brand like that, which sounds cliche, but Nike transcends normal brand marketing, right? Like their campaigns are incredibly aspirational. And that really spoke to me. I think I they helped keep me in sport, that campaign. And so long story short, like what I've been able to do and what I've carried with me on my journey as a marketer, as a sports marketer, as a female executive is the power that sports had on my career. And I would say my big win has been frankly pointing Google and Visa, these huge global brands, at having real impact in the women's sports space. I've become a known leader in this space, and a lot of that is because I've been able to convince these global brands of the value of women's sports fandom. But I think what that means is like when a brand like Google or Visa gets involved in women's sports, other brands come along. And so from a coup d'etat perspective, I guess that's my pride factor is I know that I've had a real impact in this space that I'm very proud of.
We see it in this era that I know about right now, which we see growing fastest rates. This was part of your TED Talk, right? Where you were talking about fast rates of women's sports growing in visibility and sponsorships. Like it's super exciting time right now. And you're part of that.
It's been fun. Yeah, and being at Google too, where we can have such a role to play in terms of discoverability of women's sports content is huge.
All of that leads to, along with the wins, there's challenges. So for you, would there be a mistake or a challenge that you feel like you've learned the most from in your
Mm.
path so far?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Google, like when I say Google's been a hard job, it has been a hard job. Within 6 weeks of starting here, I pretty quickly realized it also coincided with the beginning of COVID, but
Mm.
there just seemed to be this moment where I was like, wait a minute, am I I'm here to like the realization was like, I'm here sure to build something, but in the building of something, I'm also here to convince people of the value of these things. Like, yes, they've given me this job and they've said, come here and do this, but they're not totally bought in on this yet as like a marketing practice or muscle or tool in our toolbox, these integrated marketing partnerships, sponsorships, those kinds of things. And so, I think the part that's been challenging has been realizing how to like keep your North Star and the strength and the focus and the belief that you have in the value that you're bringing when it feels like you're shouting into the wind, you're having to convince people of the value of the things that like is your practice. I mean, it was like I went from Visa where they did these things in their sleep, where they basically invented a sports marketing practice that has been incredibly successful and written the playbook to like Google, where it was kind of like, I mean, often I felt like I was shouting in the wind, is this microphone on? Hello? Like so there was a lot of review, especially in those early years of like, you know what? If maybe this is too hard, like if I have to sell you on like why I'm here and why you brought me here, like maybe this isn't the job for me. And I had many conversations with myself about that, being very transparent. Now I'm like 5.5 years into my time here. And, these things have become anchor practices as part of our modern marketing practice at Google, from Europe to Australia to Japan to the United States. Like, we're doing these all over the world now. And so I'm incredibly proud of that. But like, the journey has been pushing a boulder up the hill. And I think in really hard times, one of the things that I would do for myself, and like the internal voice that I would pull on, often went back to, I keep a picture of my 3-year-old self near my desk. And I just make sure that like I'm being kind and gentle with her, and I'm asking whether or not like the journey we're on together is worthy of her. You know what I mean? Like, is she getting what she needs from this? And for some reason, it's easier for me to be gentle and hold grace and really honor the 3-year-old version of myself versus like the adult part of myself that's
Yeah.
like, oh, be tougher, be this, be that,
Yeah. Well, I thank you for bringing that up and sharing vulnerably that you have a picture of your little girl, you on your desk, because I think we forget that as our conditioning grows and we become our, like intelligent doers, thinkers of the world, knowledge creators, and literally doing what you're doing, creating a new marketplace for sports with big tech. And I think it's forgotten a lot of the times, because if we just keep going and are on that drive and critic mind and go 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 go, and if we leave her behind, and this is a lot of the stuff I work on with my executive clients too, is that then we lose ourselves and we end up burning out, and we aren't as productive or helpful as we could be because we've lost part of ourselves in that,
Yeah,
which is our true identity, which is our little self, which is always with us. So thank you
it's huge.
for saying that. And I'm so like, that's so motivating and inspiring that you have that on your desk. Do you have your medal on your desk too?
I have it. I have it on my wall over there. I
Oh
can show it
man,
to you.
we might have to get a visual on that one later.
On it. You bet. It's funny. I think the 3-year-old self, like, really what I boil it down to is kind of getting back to the things that bring you joy. And if you're not able to find moments of joy in your day-to-day work, that's a problem. Like, that's a pretty big signal.
Red flag.
Huge red flag. I would definitely say, like, I've hung in there too long on some things. Maybe that's like the athlete in me that's just like grit and bear it and bear down. But even in my Olympic year, I had a moment where, I mean, I was like rowing backwards. Like, I was not going anywhere. I was recovering from a rib injury. It looked like my dream was slipping from me. To get out of that funk and that kind of spin cycle in the end, where I was like trying so hard and everything I poured into it was not coming back to me. I had to like take a step back and for a moment just decide, like, I've got to change something. Working harder is not working. So what is it? And the thing that I really changed in the end was, like, I just decided to start getting back to the roots of why I began rowing in the first place. It wasn't to go to the Olympics. It wasn't to like accomplish this huge life-size dream. It was to have fun and to like go out and enjoy the practice of rowing. And so literally in the Olympic year, in the most important year of my rowing career, I got to this place where I was like, you know what? If I don't make it, I don't make it, but I'm going to go out having fun. And I'm going to like actually experience joy every time I put the boat on the water, every time I step in, every time I take a stroke. Like, I'm going to get back into the practice of enjoying the medium of rowing. And that is, I sincerely, how I dug myself out of this hole that I was in.
Yeah, well, when you have 3 times a day practices and you're at that elite level, that's a challenge in itself to follow the fun and joy, and it's a good parallel for career work because we get into the grind and then it just becomes goals and OKRs and timelines, and we forget that we need to bring ourselves into it and have the fun and find the fun and follow the fun because we have to create it. That's what makes it fun. That's where the play can come in and we can be nourished and succeed in ways that will be way better, 10 times better, more exponentially better than what we would do if we just felt like we're just checking the boxes or making the best out of those red flags, and it's just
Yeah.
not enjoyable. So very powerful way to think about things. And I'm glad that you stayed the course and had fun. The best, like, side note, the best races we have now as a master's rower, and my friend who just went to Worlds talks about this, like just go and have fun. And they ended up winning a gold medal at the World Masters Rowing Championships because they didn't have
Wow.
any pressure on themselves. And to
Yeah.
me, that's kind of like part of it is, well, why would you do that extra pressure and be so hard on yourself if you can actually just enjoy it and like lighten the load a little bit? It can do so. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And so knowing that you come from the rowing background, you've had coaches your whole life in a sport. Have you made any investments in yourself from the personal, professional side that, career investments, things that you've done from that end?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have an executive coach that I like required as part of my agreement to come to
I
Google. Like
love
I
that.
knew it was going to be hard. And so when I negotiated my, contract to come here, I was like, I need to have an executive coach while I'm here. She's been like my executive coach, my cancer coach, my personal coach. Like she's been a
Mhm.
lot of things for me. But right now, especially I'm using her more for the executive coaching side of things. That's been incredible. I've done a couple of I've been nominated for different leadership retreats and things like that that I found certainly helpful. But honestly, I think the most value of all the things that I've done have really come out of probably two different things that I've experienced. Definitely having an executive coach who knows you, who knows your kind of the habits and the
What's
routines
gonna happen? Yeah.
and like how to help you break out of those things. And then the other one is frankly being in a room with senior women that were from different parts of the business and just talking about like the shared experience that we're having. Because I think when you hear somebody else who's at a very senior level like you say like these are the challenges that I'm having and you hear your own challenges in that, it just completely like breaks down the barriers of like
Mhm.
this is my plight to bear. You realize like, oh, know that everybody has challenges. I just think it's really helpful when people who look like they've totally got it going on also share that like their challenges are X, Y, or Z and you
Yeah.
can relate.
100%. And I recently had that experience myself in a mastermind where I was like, wow, well, of course I'm having these challenges. It's almost adding that of course makes things like normalized. And we hear that when other people have that. So that's a really
Yeah.
powerful sentiment is yeah, coaching always important. I love that you said that and getting permission from a group of women who can share at that same level that you're at and it doesn't have to be women. I would just say whomever is there, but women, it has something special. I agree.
Yeah.
It can be,
Yeah.
anyone in your field and your level that can be a mastermind for yourself or a collaboration of what you can do differently. You brought up cancer. Is it okay if we go there a little bit?
Yeah.
'Cause I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
important
Totally.
to address for you and on the podcast. Can you share a little bit about what your journey's been like and what happened?
Yes. It was, gosh, 2021, so a year into COVID and really a year and a half into my job at Google. I went for a run and I just had the second vaccination. And after this run, I had this like sore in my armpit and I reached in and there was like a walnut sized lump in my armpit. And I had my husband feel it. He went sheet white. He's a physician. He knew immediately what it was, but he was like, go get that checked out. At the time, the vaccination was causing swollen lymph nodes in people. So they were a little bit nervous to like give me a mammogram or whatever, but I did go in and get one and it was just very obvious that I had breast cancer. I was stage 3 when we found it, which I'm just grateful that I found it when I did. I
Yeah.
say the vaccine saved my life. I was a busy mom. I had a 2.5-year-old at the time. And yeah, it just like was not doing all the checks. So that was I was, like, really intense, and I think it's funny, one of the things that I share that there's a group at Googler, like a cancer Googler group where a support group, and you can go and you can ask questions, and so I was doing that around, like, which care team should I look for? How was your treatment at UCSF? Those types of things. But it was funny, there was one woman in this group that had kept kind of like she was trying to get time on my calendar. And, I was busy. I was in the middle of this huge negotiation for the MBA, which was like the first major deal that we were doing at Google. And she reached finally, she like got on my calendar and we had a meeting. She's like, hey, I have to ask you maybe an obvious question, but that seems like you're missing. Why are you working right now? Like you're going through cancer treatment. Like what are you doing? It was like the first time someone was giving me permission. If you don't take health leave for cancer, what do you take it for? And it just again, it comes back to like I don't know if it's the athlete mindset or what, but I definitely was very nervous to let go of my routines in that time. Like cancer was very,
Blows up your
discombobulated.
world, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
just the
yeah,
big C, and then what do we do?
yeah.
Everything's in the unknown.
Yeah, totally. And it felt like, I think also as an athlete, like a real betrayal of my body. Like, are you kidding me? I have been healthy. I've been an elite athlete. Like, I've done all the right things. I take care of myself. Like, how do I have cancer? Like, this is insane. And so for this young woman, she was a young woman to like come on and be like, hey, like, maybe you could look at dialing it back. And she explained the benefits that we had. And, she was really the one that opened the door to be like, go take your leave of absence. And so I did. I took a 6-month leave of absence, which I needed. In the end, chemo got really hard. I did 16 weeks of chemo. I had a mastectomy and oophorectomy, and then I did radiation. So it was like a year-long journey. And in that time, it's funny, initially I was like, I'm going to take 6 months leave and I'm going to start writing a book and I'm going to do
Yeah, of
this.
course.
And all
All
these
the to-dos came out.
all these huge plans of like what I was going to do. And in the end, I'll tell you what I did. I went on a hike every day, a walk, just no matter how crummy I was feeling. Moving my body always helped with the side effects of treatment. I got acupuncture every day. I did like forest bathing. I hired a chef to make me like clean meals. So I was eating really well. I couldn't afford them, 7 days a week, but at least 2 days a week, I was getting really, really clean eating. And yeah, I just kind of like, it was like a reset on that front. And I think coming out of that, going back to work, I was just really clear about where I wanted to spend my time. My husband and I actually reevaluated our life at that moment. We had been doing the Bay Area grind for years. My husband was a physician that would drive 3 hours round trip to his hospital every day. And, I was doing this major commute around the Bay Area. And we just were like, what are we doing? The fires were there. So we had bought a piece of land in Park City, Utah. And during that 6-month leave of absence, we pulled the trigger and just started building. We didn't know what the plan was going to be with work and after COVID and all the things, but we just kind of took a gamble and we're like, let's just see what happens. And I'm very blessed. Google let me stay remote. My job is I'm a specialist, so I kind of am everywhere I need to be. I don't have any one team in one location because everybody that I work with literally is all over the world. So it's worked out for the best for someone like me who's a specialist to be able to plant myself in a place where I have nature around me all the time, where I make sure I get out on hikes every day to settle my mind. Yeah, it's been a huge life change.
Yeah, and a transition to what I'm hearing is an environment that works for you. To me, this is my world is the pause, right? An intentional
Yeah.
shift in behavior is what I call a pause, and also on your terms. And that takes courage, right? Even though you're high flying exec, you're crushing it on all these ways, it takes real courage. And I just want to acknowledge that right here because a lot of folks forget we can get that or cultivate it in a way that we can step away. And for you, it was your health on the line. And it doesn't have to come down to that for us, but it can. And it does if we don't listen to that earlier, in that way.
Yeah. Well, and I have to be careful because even here, I'll think about things like, okay, well, what's my next move? Where do I want to go from a career perspective? And immediately, and I did learn this trick with my executive coach. Like, usually the first or second thought that you have after an idea or an input or a comment is usually like negative. It's the third thought that we should probably be
Wait
paying
for the
attention.
third thought. That's a great tip. A good
Wait
in the
for the
moment.
third thought, because the third thought is usually where truth lives. And the first two are usually based in like fear or so like when I ever have a thought where I'm like, I see maybe somebody reaches out about a job or maybe I'm like dreaming big about what I want my next move to be. And immediately my first thought would be like, oh, well, that's based in New York City and I'm not going to move to New York. But the third thought is usually like, but maybe you could talk to them about it and you could figure out how you make that work. And if you know that this is your priority and that the life that you created for yourself here is the priority and here is how you get to show up as your best, like people will understand that and see that. And if they don't, it's definitely the wrong opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned, thinking about your next moves and after that third thought, moving into a space that's full of possibilities. What do you come up with for yourself with, if you were focused on your own career growth or supporting others, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I did this exercise actually yesterday with my executive coach. I am very clear on the opportunities that I would leave Google for. There's kind of three big jobs that I want. One that it's probably like more within grasp, and I have to right now the challenge is to like really step into that space and be ready if it comes. The others are more like long game jobs, and I think yeah, and it's like they're big jobs, like they're scary big jobs, but they're also like I pay attention to like when I think about them, like what lights up in me. I am here on this earth to do big things. That is what I know. My 80-year-old self, like if I think about what my 80-year-old self is telling me, Kate Johnson, in my 46-year-old moment, like I'm on the precipice of something big. I believe that in my bones. I believe all the work I've done to date, including at Google and over the last few years, has led to this moment that is about to be born. And I just have to be like awake and present for it. I just have to like pay attention to the signals, to the connections, to all of that because it's coming. Like,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Mm,
That and thank you for sharing. And it's the PhD of Kate Johnson, and it's all going to lead you to your next adventure. And that's incredible. Yeah. Being present is a big part of it, like you're saying, because we just miss it sometimes if we're not so heads down, focused on our work. And that's stepping out or changing up your routine, doing something different because it's where that magic happens sometimes. Like you had this
yeah.
experience with your coach. So that's
Well,
awesome.
and
I'm
to
excited.
just
I'm
like
moving on.
and keep it simple, I think too, is just like paying attention to I think it's hard sometimes. We get so busy that our intuition gets buried. But like if you can like and I love it, like the pause. If you can find those pauses in your life to actually like really listen into that intuition, like how much is your current job aligned with like the parts of yourself that like light up? And if the answer is not there easily, then you've got a problem. Or like if you know you've thrown the kitchen sink at it and you've done your best and it's still the company, the job, the team, the person, whatever isn't receiving of that, then like it's probably time to start looking for the next gig. But because no one else is going to look out for you on that front other than yourself. But yeah, I just think we can get so buried in the grind.
And then we
Um
expect it. Then we think that's the norm, and it's so not. It doesn't have to
it's
be.
It's
It's
so
really
not, and I think until you do things like step outside of that and actually create new realities for yourself where it's, like, working, like this one. We built a life in Park City that is 100% working. We get to ski tour in our backyard on the weekends. It's magic, and I get to do my best work here. Like, I feel like I'm showing up as my best self right now. So,
because you're a resource, and you're in your like element and prime of what you're doing as
yeah.
you are lit up, and that's just a testament to listening to yourself and that 3-year-old, like all of that. I'm just like, whoo, high fives all around.
Yeah, I do think there's like a divine femininity that like culturally we are not tapped into in the corporate work world. And I'm seeing these announcements like Instagram is now requiring people to come back 5 days a week. And I'm like, that is the most asinine decision you could make for a product that's meant to serve all types of people. Like to think that you're going to get the best work out of people in a conformity state, just it blows my mind.
It's a backwards move. I agreed. And let's just tap on that because we don't talk enough about that divine feminine at work. And I'm
Yeah.
100% behind you because I do agree that we're over indexed on that masculine and the doing. But what do you think could be something that people can be more aware of, whether you're male or female or anything at work that could help to really nurture that and grow it?
I mean, honestly, I think it's like having conversations like we're having right now. You know, leaving room, for example, in team meetings to just ask folks like, "Hey, have you found joy in your work this week?" Like
Mhm.
just remind like doing these very simple reminders of like touching into their inner self and their inner child of like that person's in there. If you're not, honoring them at some point in your work week, like me as your manager has a problem because I'm not getting the best out of you. So I think some of that is just making sure, and I think, it's bringing the humanity to work more and more, checking in with people as humans, not as human doers, but as human beings. And yeah, and just leaving room for that. That's probably the biggest thing for me. I think it's also like stepping into like being your radically authentic self. And I think so often we like limit the things that we say because we're worried about how they might be perceived within a certain structure. But if that structure is just so obviously and glaringly, restrictive and outdated, like if people don't talk up about that, you're not doing the business good. And at the end of the day, like those people are probably going to leave because that's not a structure that actually serves them. But you'd like to think that before there's a mass exodus at like an Instagram, for example, that enough people are speaking up about like how short-sighted a move like that is.
Yeah, and I think with the younger generations coming into the workplace, Gen Z, when Alpha's here, like there's going to be that demand because it's the changing of the guard, and there's more people that will probably be in a different space to allow that to happen, which is awesome. Like I'm
That's
excited.
right. Yeah,
So,
it's right. And here's
yeah.
the thing, like, I think too, one of the things I've noticed just going back to even the hybrid, I think hybrid is ideal state. I think it gives people flexibility to, there are days when and I even go into a shared workspace because I like human contact. I would go nuts if I was at home every single day. So I like going into a shared workspace just for a change of scenery and to have different types of conversations. But I think if companies are looking for like shared collaboration, creativity, and inspiration, those moments that don't happen every single day can be really meaningful when you're intentional about how you bring people together. And that's the piece that I just wish there was more attention and focus on.
Yeah, and you mean things like work 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, or on your own
And,
work?
like,
Yeah.
optimize those 3 days in the office for, like, real collaboration, you know? When I'm in the
Mhm.
office, I cannot answer email, so instead I save the days where I'm at home to, like, really grind through my emails and self-reflection, like, do things like year-end reviews for my teams or notes of thanks or whatever it is, versus, like, the days that I'm in the office, like, I'm really trying to optimize for, like, in-person collaboration, and I just think, like, it's all fine and well to like write these rules, but if you don't optimize for those rules based on like how each of those things are experienced, like if you're going to require people to be in the office 3 days a week, optimize those 3 days of the week to be like no email or something, so that like
Yeah,
it really is about in-person collaboration.
yeah.
Otherwise, what are we doing? Yeah.
I love that, and I think it's really important to state that because 'cause we're still figuring it out, I feel like COVID, it's been a wild experiment, and we went like, the pendulum swung one way, now and then we swung the other way, and it's where are we gonna land? And redesign a workspace that does have and honors things like the allowing of learning more about you or sharing what's going on and
Yeah.
emoting and all the things that really haven't been necessarily part of the construct from where we've come from.
Yeah.
Well, we've said a lot. Wow, this has been an incredible conversation, Kate. I want to keep talking for like 3 more hours. However, I know we got to wrap up. Are there any other last words of wisdom that you would want to share, maybe that we didn't mention yet, or just things that are coming up right now?
I guess, it's interesting. Just in like yesterday and today, I've had two friends that I've been in touch with, both who got like leave packages from their
Yeah.
companies to take a leave of absence or to, transition out of the company and find a new job. And, it's really easy when you're in a job to share with someone like, hey, take the time, don't rush to find a new job. Like take the blessing of like getting paid to take that package. And I've thought a lot about myself, like, gosh, how would I handle something like that? Like, could I just be in the state of enjoying, not having to work because I think we all want to know that something's coming. But I think for those that are kind of in that transition period, getting really clear on your gut. When I was deciding whether or not to leave rowing or continue as an elite athlete, I remember sitting in like a Wegmans parking lot in New Jersey on the phone with my rowing coach, the Olympic team coach. And he just asked me a really simple question. He's like, hey, was it ever a question of whether or not to row? And I was like, no, it was never a question. I always wanted to be rowing. And so for some reason right now I'm questioning. He's like, well, I think you have your answer. And at the end of the day, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, rowing, going to the Olympics, for example, it takes everything. You cannot be on the fence about whether or not you want to be there. You've got to be all in. I think it's the same in these jobs. Like if you're on the fence, maybe then you've got something to address there about whether or not that's the right place for you and to go figure out and give yourself that time to go figure out what's next so you can show up as your whole self to something. That is what I want like everyone to be able to experience. And if you don't feel like you get to show up as your whole self and do your whole, bodily work at a company, then like move on.
Why bother?
Why bother? Your talents are better served elsewhere.
Yeah, I want to underline that and then we'll wrap because what I'm hearing is, yeah, like go all in. You got to go all in. And if you're feeling, and I know this because I think when you get complacent in a role, you've been there 10 years. No, I don't know what, and I'm just speaking hypothetically. This is me. I'm like
Mhm.
15 years in of Google. And I felt like before I took the pause, like I was just kind of checking in and doing stuff. And I think a lot of people do that at work in general because that's what we know. But if you are, what would 100% look like if you showed up every day? Like, chances are it might be a little different. A lot of us might think we're at 100%, but are you really? Right? Are you 100% doing
Yeah.
absolutely everything that you can? And to me, that's the marker. If you are under 100%, we'll try going to 100 and then see if that job still works and is amazing, or maybe it's still not what you want and it feels like a burden and you want to move on. And cool. But if you're not at the 100%, how do you know? Because you're leaving it on the table. And
Yeah.
your authentic self will show up in that 100% because you can't fake it. You can't be someone else and be 100%, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Both feet
Yeah.
in.
Both feet in the deep end. Thank
Hmm.
you for all of this. So where can people find you, Kate? How do people get in touch with you or learn more about you and discover? 'Cause
Yeah.
you clearly have many, many great things to offer.
I did a couple years ago launch a website, The Athletic Impact, and I really do public speaking in my not so free time. I try and do like 3 to 4 public speaking appearances for companies every year. So that's a place to contact me. And then really, I would just ask everyone to watch my TED Talk.
The TED Talk,
Um,
tell us the title.
it's called The Flourishing Future of Women's.
The Flourishing Future of Women's Sports. And it's on
Yeah.
the TED.com site on YouTube, right? Or
Yep,
TED.
it's on TED and on YouTube. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
Tune in.
definitely everyone can watch that for learning more about Kate's expertise. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Kate, for being here. It's an honor to be with you, and I appreciate everything you shared today for all of us. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Thanks for listening today to the podcast. You rock. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate us, leave your review. I'd love to hear from you and help us get the word out to all of those who are in search of wanting to get out of overwhelm and rise to their next level of leadership. If you think that you might benefit from these tools or know anyone else who would, just invite them to join us. Podcast.